doctor that you can trust and trusting the doctor that you can find. Is everyone in the right place? Yes? Perfect. Well, I'm happy that you all are here with me today. I'm really excited to speak here today because before finding out about this conference, I didn't even know about this condition. I know about other autoimmune diseases. My aunt was recently diagnosed with MS, so that has been a journey learning what that's like. So being able to attend this conference and learning more about you all's journeys as patients, as caregivers has been a great experience. So I thank you for welcoming me into this space. And I'm excited that you all get to be here with me today. Okay, so today's objectives are to discuss, like I said, what matters to you the most. Also, envision what a healthy relationship with your care team looks like. I know that there's books out there about the top 5 love languages, right? We put so much energy into developing relationships with a loved one or, a spouse or a friend. But why don't we have books about the top 5 love languages with your doctor, with your care team? I feel like a book on that would be better than the top 5 love languages and those types of quizzes because we don't always put enough energy into developing what that relationship looks like with our doctors and our healthcare team in general. So that's what this session is all about. I know that some of you are amazing advocates for yourself and you have great experiences and examples about how you have developed that relationship. I know that because at Show Your Stripes last night, I walked around talking to some of you, and some of you have really awesome ways that you talk to your doctors. I remember speaking to this one woman who's actually in Washington, D.C., and is based with a doctor in Hopkins, and she's like, yeah, my doctor and I text each other. I was like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing in 2019, whatever works. So I would love to hear examples about what works for you, and if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're like, you know what, my relationship with my doctor is the worst, I want this to be a place where we can collaborate and figure out a way that we can leave these doors better than we came in. And then the last one is to empower you and equip you with some tools to communicate if you are on that opposite end of the spectrum. I have a document that I'll give out a little halfway through the conversation to basically have you think about some things before you make that next doctor's appointment or before you go out and try to find a doctor that works better for you. So those are a couple of our goals and objectives for the day. Perfect. And so just to let you know a little bit about the Patient Advocate Foundation and the National Patient Advocate Foundation. Basically, we are sister organizations, and the Patient Advocate Foundation is actually based in Hampton, Virginia. Is anyone from Virginia? No, I'm alone. Oh, man. Okay, well, Patient Advocate Foundation is based in Hampton, Virginia, and they are an awesome organization that helps with copay relief, financial navigation. They literally have a call center of about 200 people, and you can call and say, I have this appointment in 2 months, but I don't have transportation there. And we will have case managers that help you figure out the answers to those questions that sometimes get overlooked. Something like transportation or childcare, things that are important to you, but your doctor might overlook. We're there to fill in the gaps for those. And then the National Patient Advocate Foundation, which is based in Washington, D.C., which is who I technically work for, is the sister organization of PAF. And we work in tandem with them to basically provide different policies and advocacy to support the important work that PAF does. So we say that they're more like boots on the ground, and then we're more that high-level organization that helps support the work that they do, because we know in order to do that important hands-on work, you need policies in place to make that happen, because policies unfortunately make the world go round. You need money to make that happen. So my organization gets to do that. And then another great thing we do is advocacy. So I was just talking to Sandy earlier, who's based in Dallas/Arkansas, and she was talking about, like, do you all travel a lot to host different workshops like this? And we actually have a host of workshops and trainings. We also have a group of patient advocates that we work with throughout the year to do exactly what this is, you know, finding people's stories and being able to amplify it, because you don't need someone to tell your story. You just need someone to build a platform so you can tell your own. So that's what MPAF does. And here is the difference between patient-centered care and person-centered care. And I know that you all probably know this. This is a review, and I hope you know this. If you don't know this, then that's a great thing. But if you do know this, that's also a great thing. So for patient-centered care, unfortunately, that's the way the world works mostly. We're seeing a transition out of that, where, you know, in the past it was all about your diagnosis, your treatment, you know, your outcomes, you know, things like that. And at MPAF and PAF, we realized that all of that stuff is nice. It's important to talk about that. But what matters the most to you as opposed to what's the matter with you? You know, you go into an office and they're like, oh, what's the matter with you? And it's like, it doesn't matter what's the matter with me. It matters what matters to me. You know, so if I receive this diagnosis and, you know, it's impeding on my ability to be mobile, how can my family continue to depend on me? You know, will I have to depend on someone else? These are real world questions that people have sometimes swarming around in their mind, but they don't always vocalize them to their healthcare team, and their healthcare team doesn't always ask them. So MPAF does work to make sure that we empower people to ask those questions, but we also educate healthcare teams to realize the importance of those questions. So yeah, it's about whole person, quality of living, uncertainty, hopes, and fears. So, like I said, this is a conversation. So I want to know, this is a question for everyone, what matters to you? You can say, my children matter to me, my cousin, my mom, my dog, the price of my medication, whatever it is. Raise your hand and feel free to share with me in the rest of the room what matters to you. Yes?
To travel, because I love to travel.
Yes, your ability to travel. Yes.
Receiving the proper diagnosis. I was diagnosed with polymyositis, but I wonder if it could be IBM. Because at the time I was diagnosed, I did not have a muscle biopsy or an MRI. So I'm concerned that, and I'm not sure about the doctor I'm going to, because he's local, you know, to where I live, and he doesn't appear to know a whole lot. So I'm wondering if I should get a second opinion, and maybe I need further testing, or I feel like my treatment I'm under now is really not doing me any good. So why am I taking it? Why am I still taking prednisone or methotrexate? I still feel weak. You know, so I'm just concerned that maybe I'm not doing everything I should be doing, or, you know, seeing the right doctor, because I want my quality of life to improve a little bit, the daily living. It's you know, getting around, getting up from chairs and stairs and stuff. That's my big concern. You know, I feel like it affects my daily life in that way, you know. But other than that, you know, that's my big challenge. And psychologically, I'm feeling like I'm isolated and nobody understands what this is all about. So that's what I'm doing now.
Thank you for sharing. Has anyone ever experienced that? A misdiagnosis or a treatment that you were on that wasn't helpful?
Yes.
A couple of people? Yes.
Basically, yeah, I'm sorry I'm back here, but it's just easier for me not to negotiate.
No, whatever works.
And this high chair, I've been so grateful people are helping me. But I had the same experience when I was first diagnosed, but then they did the biopsy and the EMG, right? But what happened with me is my neurologist said, you need to write letters to the radiologist or whoever reads it, the pathologist or radiologist, whoever reads your chart, you know, He said he read your script wrong. And before I even sat in the chair, he goes, you have IBM, not poly. Because I started out being diagnosed with poly.
Really?
Yes, and they put me on prednisone. And then only to find within a month after that, when I finally got to see this doctor I was waiting to see, and he said, no, this is IBM, and scratch the prednisone, it's not going to help you. So I went through that very same experience. And like she was alluding to, probably one of the most frustrating things is with this disease. I had so many people thinking I was just making this up. And why don't I go to the Mayo Clinic and research it deeper? So I called the Mayo Clinic. I said, can I come down there and see you? When are you coming for IBM? Oh, well, we can't do anything for IBM anyway. So they basically went like this. Well, now I hear there's a couple of doctors here from Mayo Clinic, and I would like to get their names. Because when I went to my doctor here in Minneapolis that I was referred to down at the University of Minnesota, I hadn't been for 2 years. I walk in, he sits down, pushes on my arms and legs and says, oh, you're doing pretty good for 1 year. I thought, oh my God, you didn't even look at my chart. He didn't even read my chart. So consequently, I'm sorry if you didn't hear a lot of it, but consequently, I'm searching for a new neurologist. But in my original diagnosis, I was diagnosed wrong because the radiologist read the script wrong from my biopsy. He read it wrong and called it poly. So they started me on prednisone. Go to the radiologist that started with first. He goes, no. Before I even sat in the chair, he goes, no. He must have looked at that read, you know. And he says, no, you have IBM. And took the prednisone away and left me on my own. That's the hard part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And also, when I asked that question, there were a couple of people over here who also raised their hands. So this is a great place to connect with people and figure out, what worked for them, what tactics they used in order to basically get to the right path that is needed. Did any of you who raised your hand wanted to share? Yeah.
I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis by a neurologist and went for about 4 or 5 years taking different things like methotrexate, I can't remember that, didn't do good for me at all. So eventually I went to, he's one of the top specialists in the nation for myasthenia gravis, and he was at Davis University Hospital there. And I went to him and he goes, you do not have it. And he kept saying, and he ran all these different tests, and I kept saying, no, I didn't want a muscle biopsy. And finally he had it, and he says, he had to spell it out to me, because I had what? And anyway, thank goodness I did that, because then, but then it's been a hard path. Now we're with Kaiser, which is a big health plan, and I do have a lady neurologist who says she knows all about it and used to work at Davis, but it's kind of like, hello, you look good, see you in a year. And I had learned to monitor the blood levels, the different CK things, and the thing that showed that methotrexate wasn't doing any good for me was shown in different tests. Yeah, but now my MD, my regular doctor, I find I get more help from him because I kept asking for leg breaks for my knees, and she says, oh, well, we'll see about it. Never got anything done. So the PT referred me to it and sent a referral to her. Well, she never did anything. So about 6 weeks later, I emailed or texted my doctor, a regular doctor, and I had the braces appointment within a few weeks. And as soon as I get back, I'm going to go see him again and tell him I'm ready for a motorized thing, because I fell. But he's not even a specialist.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes people who aren't specialists, but people who are listening instead of just hearing you. Because anyone can talk, y'all can hear me right now, but are you listening? And there's a difference. Clearly, your doctor, she heard you, and she said, yeah, we'll do that later. But your MD, like your primary care doctor, he actually listened to you and said, oh, this is something that you feel like you need, and you know your body the most because you're walking around on these knees all day, every day, and he listened to you, and now you have the care that you need. So sometimes it takes going out of the people that we expect to help us and finding people who will support us. You know, support systems look different for each person. Does anyone else have any helpful tools or examples of how they spoke up and received the care that they needed?
It's not quite a tool, but a question actually.
Okay.
So I was diagnosed February 2019, and I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. And when I got released, I was seen by a resident. And of course, you know, they have a doctor to sign off. And I stayed with him for about a year plus until to the point that, you know, it getting worse and I could not get in touch with him. So I called to switch to a doctor, and I got to try for almost like 2 months for them to let me to switch. And finally I was able to switch, and I'm with him now. But my question is, you know, like how long would you stay with a doctor that, like let's say, how long would you stand for things not being good or getting better before you decide to switch and thinking that, okay, this doctor doesn't know what he's doing? So how long?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to run over here. Do you also have a question for her?
I can kind of sum all of it.
Okay, perfect. That's what we need.
Hello everyone, my name is Kanaya. I'm from Virginia, and I had dermatomyositis for since 2007. But I went around the ringer, up and down the roller coaster myself. They first did a deltoid muscle biopsy on my left arm, and they diagnosed me with polymyositis. So with me, polymyositis is a little bit of mix of everything that's going on. I was on prednisone for long term, 60 to 40 to 20, all the way trying to taper down and still going up and down the roller coaster. So once they did the deltoid muscle biopsy, my local doctors weren't quite sure as far as to what was going on, and they didn't have background education in the myositis. So it took up to 4 years to get the help that I need, and I wound up going to Baltimore, which is the Johns Hopkins Myositis Center. But back to like she said, that you know, once you feel within your soul and your body, only you know through experience exactly what you're feeling. Normally your body is trying to signal that something's just not right. So don't settle just because of, you know, their diagnosis. Get a second opinion. I think I have ran through a whole lot of doctors because of my local doctors weren't quite sure what was going on. So now today I kind of like build patient relationship just so everybody can get a better understanding all the way around the board, because all communities, I do feel, need to know, because this thing is very rare. It's a mystery diagnosis with IBM and what she's dealing with. And like she said, that she had a resident. It took a resident from Johns Hopkins to come in once I was hospitalized during my 4th year to refer me. And thank God that he was actually working 10 years with Johns Hopkins to recognize this mystery disease. So residents are good, but if you're not comfortable, I say move on, get a second opinion, because only you know your body. And I said love yourself first. And one question that kind of like puzzled me when I first came in, it says, what matters to you the most? As I'm telling you all guys, you got to be proactive and advocate and be a voice for yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. So no, that wasn't like a 1 month, 2 month answer to your question, but what she said is it might take the next person 6 months, you know? But for you, you might be over it in 1 month and you want to move on, you know? I take this back to the analogy of a relationship. How long will you stay in a relationship with someone who isn't bringing you the flowers that you want or isn't communicating the way you want to? I know I personally stayed in relationships years past what I should have. And then when I explain it to a person, they're like, oh, I would have left him a really long time ago. So it really depends on you. So we can't really give you like a number. And I know I don't want you to walk away not feeling satisfied, but the fact that you're even asking this question shows that you're probably ready to move on and find a second opinion and find someone that gives you the care that you need, you know. So, Sandy?
Well, the doctor that diagnosed me was at the time, I was very fortunate, was at the time the head of the rheumatology department at Scott & White Diagnostic. And he is, you know, a leading expert on myositis. He treated me since 2009, and just a few short years ago, he decided to retire like he deserves to have a life or something. So I have been, since then, I went on quite a journey trying to find another doctor. And your question is, how long do you go on with a doctor that you feel like doesn't know what to do? My husband kind of answered that question in that the second visit, I was with a new rheumatologist in Dallas, and she walks into the room and starts working my elbows with, you know, manipulating my arm, working my elbows, and said, are you having much joint pain? And I said, I have polymyositis. And she said, yes, I know. Are your joints hurting? And my husband said, thank you, we've heard enough. We won't be back. And I was kind of like, that was kind of rude. And he said, we don't have time to waste with people who pretend they know what they're doing. I think that, and you know, I have doctors in my family, so I'm talking about my own people here, but so many times a doctor cannot seem to admit that this particular disease and other rare diseases are simply not in their wheelhouse. And so instead of saying, you know, this is not really my area, let me help you find someone, then we're just left to guess, you know, does this dude know what he's doing? For me, the answer more than once was no. And I finally ended up settling with a neurologist who we had heard was treating someone that was from our town in the small area of Longview, Texas. And he had walked into the room of this man who was frankly near death, and no one could figure out what was wrong with him in this hospital. And this doctor, to make a long story short, just walked in, just kind of a last-minute consult, and excuse me. And he said, I believe this man has polymyositis. And the wife of the man said, so why would you say that? He said, my brother has polymyositis. And I was like, I want that doctor's name, because he has a reason to care about polymyositis. So, yeah, I'd say 5 minutes and then you leave.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes?
I just have a comment about the doctor that doesn't want to see me often or actually really listen. We actually were sending her updates on info that we got, you know, either through TMA or from other patients, you know, that are on the Facebook thing. And she would just say, yeah, that's good, that's good. No, that doesn't apply. But it's kind of like those that want to pretend they know, or I shouldn't say that, think they know, they get offended if you seem to know a little more. So it's a hard thing to try to figure out, should I sit with this person or not? The biggest key is, do they really listen to what your living situation is?
And another key element that Sandy brought up is that her husband was there with her. And not all of us might have a spouse, but having an advocate and having someone else in the room for you who will say that rude comment, who will not let you waste your time, that's key, you know. And if you don't, you know, necessarily have that person in your family or your friend circle, definitely reach out to TMA and see, you know, how can they provide support in that area. because having an advocate and someone who can speak up in those moments really does make the difference, you know, because if her husband wasn't there, how long would she have entertained, you know, that doctor, you know, is the real question. So this next page was just some examples of answers that we had to this question about what matters to you based on the different surveys that we have had conducted with our patient groups that we work with. So some of them is, how much is this going to cost? Are you in network or out of network? Because we're talking about switching doctors, finding new doctors. Does the network matter to you, or do you just care about getting the treatment that you deserve? You know, some people have different answers to that question. Will I need a caregiver who will help / teach me? How can I get to my appointments, you know? If it isn't a far away area or you have to drive over an hour, you know, and you can't physically drive, how are you going to get there? How can I control the pain so that I can still do the things that I love? Is one question that a lot of people ask mentally, but they don't always verbally say those things. And so another point that I want to focus on is, what does a healthy relationship with your care team look like? So we've shared a couple of examples of that, but I have another question about raise your hand if you do have a great relationship with your care team and you feel like you trust them, they listen to you, you feel like it's a good budding relationship. Okay. Okay. So the two of you have shared what that looks like. Would the two of you mind sharing? What does that look like? You know, what is the communication? Do you email your doctor? Do you text your doctor? Like, how have you built that good relationship?
I'm still fairly new to all this, but my neurologist is actually here. He's a presenter. He specializes in IVM. He's the head of neuromuscular area at KU Med, and he's doing clinical trials. So fortunately, not through my GP, because that's going to change. So I'm kind of the opposite end. I went to a local neurologist who got me as far as the EMGs and MRIs and so forth, blood tests, and then watched me walk and do some, you know, physical strength tests, and said, let's do a muscle biopsy, and that just happened to get me to KU Med. And so my communication with him is, my muscle biopsy was December 5th, so it was still just this last fall, so we're not even on a year, is that we have, through my chart, I can communicate with his nurse, Aubrey, all the time. She's right back and forth with me, whether it's billing, whether it's medical, where it's described that. What did that test mean again? Because I don't remember when we talked. And he's also very good about sending the notes that he took precisely on our visit. I mean, word for word, just about. I can almost read what we spoke about and look at all different kinds of possibilities. So I see him every 6 months, but willing to do more. Now, my problem with that, or challenge, is when I called my general practitioner and asked all these tests that you take, you know, always go back to your home doctor, who I've seen since I was in high school. I said, you know, I'm 55 years old and nobody's called me. You know, you've received all these tests. I basically stayed with him because he's a nice guy, good doctor, okay, my kids went through all that. But for having nothing really on my chart serious, and then have all these tests go back, you know, just a little call would be nice. So I need to look for that. My relationship with my neurologist is great. I have total trust in him, and he knows what he's doing, but I need to go backwards on the other end.
Perfect, thank you.
I was just going to share that I have seen 7 rheumatologists. So like you were asking, when do you give up? It took 7 doctors in 2 years. And I'm finally settled with I'm diagnosed with lupus with dermatomyositis. And the Johns Hopkins doctor is who I see. And I love him because we message through my chart. And I can say, you know what, my feet are swelling. Is it the myfortic? My husband laughs because this man is on it. I'm like, does he not have another life? Because he responds to me right away. He said yes or no or whatever. I mean, we're still having some medicine issues that we're working out, you know, but for the most part, I really do like him and I feel comfortable, but it took me 7 doctors to find that. I was curious just to ask, how many doctors did it take you guys to be, like, is everybody on their first doctor or their 10th doctor or their, because this is hard stuff to try to find the right daggone doctor. Don't you just wish you could go in and say, these are my symptoms, and that doctor, the first one would say, you have this or you have this, and none of this baloney where you have to go through 7 doctors, 10 doctors. That's my, in a perfect life, right? No, in a perfect life, none of us would have this problem. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you. You shot your hand right up. I don't know if your number's high or where you're going with this.
7 in 2 years.
It took me 7. I walk in and we discussed talking.
It took me 7 months to get a rheumatologist.
Wow. It took you 7 months to get one doctor's appointment?
Yes.
I don't know how I'm managing, but
where do you live? Seven doctors. That's amazing to me because, you know, in El Paso, there's very few rheumatologists. And the lady that I went to see, I like her. She's very, very approachable. And we worked together for a year before she sent me to another doctor. But, I mean, I was happy with, even though we were not making any progress, because she would start me on this medication and I didn't do anything, and my condition just kept getting progressively worse. But then finally she sent me to somebody else that dealt with dermatomyositis. And he looks at me and says, oh, classic. So he started me on bad medication for me, and then he started me on the IVIG, and that's what finally controlled it.
Okay. Well, I'm happy that you got to your...
7 months going to the office every day. Do you have an opening yet? Do you have an opening yet?
That's so frustrating, right?
Yeah, locations. Locations in Houston. Hello.
So I'm Bob. I came late. I apologize.
No problem.
My wife has IBM 15 years, and we went through the journey many of you had. I think it took 5 years. And the university misdiagnosed stuff, et cetera, et cetera. I'm also a physician and treat chronic illness in another area, mainly dementia. So I see this from the other side. And when I look at this question and look at my wife's journey, there are a few things that I think about. One is if with the disease spectrum that you folks have, you all have a diagnosis or close to that, don't see a primary care physician as your only. See a specialist in one of the centers, preferably somebody who's here. They don't pay me to say that, but you need to see somebody who's interested in your disease, who has expertise. And you may see them every year, which it's expensive, I get that, but don't see anybody else. Because no one really knows what you have. They don't understand that, and you've been a long time. Second is you need to see a primary care physician, and that's really hard because none of them understand what you have or your situation. And the 3 things that I ask people to remember, one's already been mentioned, is bring somebody with you if you're not a strong advocate for yourself. And sometimes we're strong advocates, but we get intimidated in physician offices. And so bring somebody with you and say, no, darn it, sit down. The second thing, and I think this is the one I really want to add, is these physicians have limited time. And the health system's broken. We're not going to fix it. But they may have 10 minutes or 15 or half an hour, and you have more time than you need to talk about your issues, etc. So what I tell people to do is 2 things. I send the physician an email through my charter or whatever ahead of time saying, they don't know you, here's my meds, here's my stuff, and here are the 14 things I want to talk about. And when you get there, make sure you know the top 1 or 2 or 3 things you want to talk about. And what I actually tell people is to write them or type them out on a piece of paper and put them on the desk in front of the physician and say, I'd really like to talk about at least these 3 things today, because you may not get all your issues addressed. And what I think that does to the care team, it builds confidence that you're prioritizing and respecting their time and energy, and it gets you what you want. And I have found that that strengthens relationships.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob, for sharing. Those are very helpful tips. And it's funny because they're in alignment with the tips that I wrote on this document that I'll hand out. So on this document, it's an infographic, so there's limited space. So on the actual PowerPoint itself, I wrote a couple of more words and points to elaborate on what's on this sheet. And similar to what we were just discussing, if you have any additions to what's on the sheet or what's on the PowerPoint, I would love to hear you all's input. Do you like handouts or do you not like handouts?
I do, and I missed there from some of the other sessions. No handouts.
Oh, please write that in my evaluation. I'm fully serious. So the first one on this handout is telling your doctor and your healthcare team about you as a person, which I feel like we've talked about heavily. You know, what matters to you the most. Just an example of one that we discussed in a workshop that we previously did is a woman shared that she is a single parent, you know? And that really touched me, and it was something that I remembered because people say, oh, I have children, but sometimes people assume if you have children, you have other people that could take care of them if you aren't able to. So when she shared, like, I'm a single parent, and that's something that she shared with her healthcare team, that really stood out to me and stuck out to me. And I was like, wow, that's a really good one. You know, what are those unique facts about you that your doctor won't ask about, but that you care the most about? Then the second one is what Robert was just talking about. Writing down what is most concerning to you and sharing that information with your doctor. And we, you know, talking about what are your hopes and concerns. And earlier, when I first asked this question, you shared that you like to travel, you know. So if you have mobility concerns, how can I travel with these mobility concerns? You know, like, how can we make this work for the lifestyle that I want to live out? And those are important things to share with your doctor because they're not going to know what your hobbies are and what your fears and your hopes are for your future. So definitely sharing that with them is important. And also realizing that your circumstances and things that you care about may change over time, you know. If you being concerned about your children right now, your grandchildren, because they're at a certain age, well, when they get a little older, maybe you're a little less concerned about them. They can take care of themselves. So making sure that you update your care team on those things as time goes on, because like you said, some of you have had this diagnosis for 10 years. So your concerns and priorities 10 years ago are definitely different than what they are today. Number 3 is coming prepared for your appointments. I love the way Robert said this. You know, we always talk about doctors having limited time, right? And it sounds a little selfish and we don't really want to hear that. It's like, if I need 3 hours, give me 3 hours. But we know, like he said, the system is broken. I don't agree with you when you said that we're not going to fix it because I'm a complete optimist. I'm unicorns and rainbows. I believe that we can fix it. But it is realistic, you know, realizing that they have a certain amount of time and you need to go in there with your agenda because they're coming in there with their agenda, so we might as well go in there with our agenda, you know. And if you think about it, they're taught this in med school, you know, how to walk into a room prepared to get what they need. But no one ever teaches patients and people how to walk into a room and get what we need. So having this information ahead of time and being able to share that with them, whether it's through my chart or whatever communication works for your doctor best, definitely doing that ahead of time is great. So bringing a list of your current medications, something down here at the bottom, like we said, having someone who can be an advocate, because if you're sitting there, the doctor's just talking to you, you might not have time to, write notes, record what they're saying, everything like that, but having that second set of ears there can definitely be helpful to help you remember what exactly happened through that appointment. Number 4 is talking about what you're experiencing and feeling, and that focuses on making sure that you realize that your truth and your lived experiences is so true. It's so needed, and a huge thing. My director Gwen, we were talking about this before I came here. She was like, people don't realize, or maybe we do realize, but it was never vocalized this way. 99% of our care happens outside of the doctor's office. It's that 1%. Someone mentioned they see their doctor every 6 months. I think it was you. Okay, and then what happens to those other months? You're taking care of yourself. You are your primary care doctor. Without the education, without the schooling, without the charts, without all the extra stuff. So how can you be best equipped to take care of yourself in those months when you're not in that office is a huge thing for you to remember and for them to remember as well. You have a whole life outside of this. And that goes back to the conversation around person-centered care versus patient-centered care. You have a whole life outside of this diet. This is just a small little portion. Yes, it may overshadow a lot of things because of the symptoms and how you said it impacts your day-to-day activities, but we're realizing that when you look in the mirror and when people look at you, since this can be for some people an invisible illness, they don't see that. They see you in all your glory of other things. Your families, they see you as the person that they might have depended on for so many years, and being able to shift those roles and figuring out what this new life looks like or what this continued life looks like is something that it's important for your healthcare team to acknowledge and respect as well. And then the last one is, I feel like, the most important one. Telling your doctor how you like to get information. I know a lot of you mentioned my chart. Do any of you use other things besides my chart? Or is that like the big thing that people use?
I use it similar to my chart.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other tools that people use, specifically around communication? So my favorite on this board is your care team should listen to you and your concerns without speaking over you. And they might not blatantly speak over you, but they could also be speaking over you in your head and their heads because they think they know where you're going with that sentence, or they think they have the answer to your question before you end the question. So making sure that you are aware of that, and if you see that happening, vocalize it. We talk about moving on to another doctor and finding someone that's better for you, but I think we should rewind and also realize that the first step in that is communicating to your doctor and to your healthcare team when something they're doing is incorrect or something they're doing doesn't mesh well with you. I take it back to this relationship situation. In a relationship, you shouldn't just break up with a person. Even if they've done horrible things to you, you shouldn't just break up with them. You should first tell them, hey, this relationship isn't working for me because of X, Y, and Z. And it's important to tell your doctor that, because if they're treating you that way, most likely they're treating a lot of their patients that way. So you can be an advocate for yourself, but also to the rest of the people that him or her are providing for, And by having that open dialogue in the beginning and saying, these are the areas that, I would like to fix, that gives your doctor and healthcare team the opportunity to fix them or to not fix them, And if they don't fix them, then you know, oh, oh, you don't care? Oh, okay. This is really not going to work. Let me go. You know, but really giving them that opportunity to show up for you and to be there for you. So yeah. And then I wanted to open it up for questions or comments. You did great on time. Yes.
You know, I think it's really disappointing for me if I'm asking the doctor for information, I can't find a support group in my area. Oh, well, you know, he doesn't say, I'll help you find one. I mean, if I can't find it still when I'm searching or whatever, they seem, well, my previous doctor, my first doctor, he was pretty good, but the second one is the one that, you know, oh, you know, you'll find one or whatever. I mean, I felt like I was getting blown off. But I think that these doctors, rheumatologists, need to know more about myositis, and, you know, these are the kinds of questions that, you know, patients are looking for answers. They need help, you know, and I was just like trying to find, I never even knew about the Myositis Association, and they don't even know about it. I mean, they could never tell me, you need to, you know, look into it and join it. But I felt like, you know, that would have been helpful to me 6 years ago when I just found out on my own like 4 months ago, you know. So I just kind of disappointed that I don't always get the information I hope to get from some of the doctors. And, you know, I understand that, you know, it's a rare disease and they don't know everything, but I think that's what I want to make sure the person I go to, you know, he knows a lot more than ones I've seen. Although my first doctor, he was very good, very understanding. He always knew I had questions, and he took the time, and he never rushed me. So I think that's important, you know, like most people were saying, you know. But yeah, it's just, you have to find the right person that's right for you. A person won't work for everybody, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Could you advise how, I live in Minneapolis, if there's some kind of resource where I could call and find a different neurologist than I'm using? Mine is at the university. He specializes in this disease, but he's very cavalier and quite indifferent. And it's a long drive for me to go there for that. Is there a resource I can tap to try to find someone else in this city without going to Mayo?
Have you reached out to the support group here?
No.
No? Okay, so maybe that would be an option, and definitely talking to the TMA representatives. But that's my answer. Is anyone here in Minnesota? Yes?
Oh, you are? My husband was diagnosed at the Minneapolis Clinic of Neurology.
Right.
And Dr. Kelkar.
Right, me too.
Okay, so that's where you're at. Yeah, he said, oh, there's something you can do for it. So.
Well, he kind of shipped me down to you, and I ended up with someone else.
Okay, my husband is seeking the process of checking it now.
I would, we could talk offline.
Okay.
There's only really two options in Minneapolis.
Really?
Minneapolis Clinic of Neurology is the largest neurology clinic in the world.
It's what?
It's the largest neurology clinic in the world. There's like 100 docs, but none of them know these issues very well. And the university doesn't. You need to go to Mayo.
Really?
Yeah. I would go to Mayo if I were you.
All right.
If your insurance will pay for it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that information, because I'm debating about the Mayo myself. I started with Kelkar. I wanted a second opinion. I went to the University of Minnesota with Dr. Manasakis. You know, you check back in a year, you're like an oddity. I want to see what happens.
What? What'd you say? What'd you say?
My feeling was you know, he said, check back in a year. And my feeling was that he just wanted to see what was wrong with me by next year. He gave me no information. He referred me to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Never mentioned Myositis Association. I didn't know they existed until just prior to this. So I'm searching as well. I went back to my primary caregiver. She referred me to a different neurologist. She referred me to the university, or to the Mayo Clinic. I've been accepted. I'm waiting for an appointment. So I'm wondering, okay, I was just back to see Myositis, and he's adamant that he has the right diagnosis. Well, I'm not so damn sure. So I'm kind of torn about what to do. So I appreciate that comment very much. Thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
Which is not unique to Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes these conditions are best served by rheumatologists and sometimes neurologists, and they have different philosophies about treatment often, and that's part of the challenge. So if you go down to Mayo Clinic, wherever you are, they'll treat IBM a little differently depending upon who you see. And so you need to ask about that as well if you can. For those of you in Minnesota, Steve Yitterberg is a rheumatologist here on the advisory board. I would just go up and talk to him. Say I'm coming down to Mayo's, or somebody I should see in neurology that you'd recommend, and he'd say himself if it's rheumatology. But, I mean, they're very approachable here, and you should do that.
I started with the rheumatologist, but he shoved me off to the neurologist.
I'll talk to you. I'm sorry.
No, this is perfect. You weren't here when I opened it, but I said this is a conversation. I want us to help each other. If there are any more comments, questions, if there aren't, there are. Yes. And while we have these, please take out your evaluations. Also listen to what Margaret has to say while filling out your evaluation.
So I'm here on behalf of my brother who was just diagnosed with IBM this year. And so he feels he's got a correct diagnosis. However, the neurologist, well, I'm not even sure on the specialty of the person, but the person said, okay, well, there's nothing we can do. And so now there's obviously been plenty of sessions here that say exercise is definitely an answer. So he's got a doctor who's saying there's nothing I can do, and yet he's got evidence to the contrary. And I guess I'm looking to find out what's the best way to maneuver that. Is it just a change, or is there a going back again saying, here, how about this information, or is it really just better to move on? Because she doesn't want to see him for 6 months, and I don't think he wants to wait 6 months to find out. So.
Yeah. I think Sandy's husband said it best, move on. Like, you don't have 6 months or a year to wait. Like, how dare I do that? I would say move on. And also, since is your brother here in Minnesota as well? I saw yours said Minnesota, so I thought he was here. Where is he? Oh, okay. Yes, if you need an evaluation, please raise your hand, and I will bring it to you. Oh yeah, no problem. Do you both of you need them? Anyone else? Yes. Yes.
Oh, not necessarily need a microphone. I'm probably loud enough.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, and maybe because I've heard things go opposite. So I was originally referred to a neurologist. My primary doctor who put me on prednisone. I did blood work. I get to the neurologist, and the neurologist is like, your CPK number went down. You have no neurological disease, nothing for me to see, and refers me to the rheumatologist. And now I see a rheumatologist. So it's like, there's all kinds of other people who, like, it's neurologists that are seeing people for IBM, and then mine, I was pushed off by the neurologist to a rheumatologist who said I don't have anything, that IBM is not neurological, and so not something for a neurologist to treat. So I'm like in a quandary because I hear people going back and forth, like people are getting shoved from this one to that one, and some see both. So it's kind of, I don't know if I should be seeing both or a different. I'm not even sure. My rheumatologist is very nice. I like him. I told him I was coming here, and he's like, you know what? He says, I've been to these before. I couldn't make this one. He said, but if you find out anything new, if there's something you want to try, come back, bring me pamphlets, bring me stuff. So he was very receptive to me coming here, but I live in Las Vegas, and we don't necessarily have the best health care, in my opinion, but that's my opinion, in Las Vegas. And so, you know, I'm looking to possibly go to a doctor someplace else that maybe has more of a specialty. But I was just curious because people are getting kind of shoved from one specialty to the other, and then some see both, and I don't know. Yeah. Should you be seeing both, or like just one, or other, or none, or you see both?
Has anyone seen better example? Oh, not better.
I went from my primary to a dermatologist. The dermatologist recommended the rheumatologist. This is the one that I waited 7 months to go see. After I was with her for about a year, trying all kinds of treatments, she finally sent me to a different dermatologist that has been following me through. And I go to the VA, so my primary physician in the VA knows very little, but I took her some of the information from here. And basically they just approved for me to continue seeing my regular doctors. So right now the dermatologist is the one in charge of my treatment. Oh wait, and he's really good at taking advice.
It seems like different people do different things. I know. But she's a nice.
Why was the whole, like, it's not neurological? Why would a neurologist want to see? Why would you go see a neurologist if it's not a CNO? So I don't know, and that's not what they kind of did.
So the thing I'd comment about neurology and rheumatology, particularly for IBM, is that you want somebody who's expert and cares about it, because although there aren't really treatments, medical treatments for that, those clinicians can open up doors to get physical and occupational therapy evaluations, exercise evaluations, help you with exercise programs, monitoring. The ones who know about these diseases will be up to date on new research in addition to the TMA. So they may not individually have a pill, but if they understand the disease and as either, they can get you access to what you need that make you healthy. And that's how I think about it.
That's true, yeah. Thank you so much. Is my volunteer? That's collecting the surveys? Okay, so for the surveys, if you all could leave them on this chair, turned over face down so I don't see them, to protect the integrity of everything. But thank you all so much for attending. My contact information is on the board. If you would like me to send you a hard copy of the worksheet that I gave out, I can feel free to do that. If you are a business card person, I will be at the back with my business cards.